Good evening. It's the night that precedes the reading of the budget statement and economic policy document of the Mahama administration, the first in 2025. And you're welcome to our show here, State of Affairs, here on GHOne television. We are also live from our studios at the Platinum Place, Northridge, live on Facebook, live on X, and live on YouTube. So do what? Just join us on Facebook with your thoughts, your comments, your views, and contributions. My guest for tonight is a man who for years has, been at this side of the seat before he decided to enter into politics. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, Member of Parliament for Ofoase Ayirebi. This is the third time that people say, well, we want you to represent us in the legislative arm of government in Parliament. He's also the immediate former Minister for Works and Housing. Before that, he was the Minister for Information from 2018 until he was reassigned by His Excellency, the former President, Nana Addo Dankwa. Tonight, we're talking the budget, his expectations. Also, we'll be looking at the State of the Nation address presented by John Dramani Mahama. He's had a lot to say in Parliament. I mean, he became very popular also in this short while because he said 124-hour policy explanations be brave. Honorable, you're welcome to the show.
Sure, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too.
I'm okay.
Fantastic. So, yes, I mean, the people of Ofoase Ayirebi have given you a third-time mandate to represent them. How does that come to you?
It's very humbling. It's also a challenge. When you have about 100,000 people say that we want you to go take our chair in the Legislative Assembly and to represent us, to advocate for us, to assist the formulation of government policy and to serve us in terms of pushing for development for us. It's a responsibility, but it's also a humbling honor, and I handle it with all the seriousness I can muster.
And looking at how you won, the margin by which you won, was that what you were expecting, or you were expecting more?
We usually do about 4,000 to 6,000.
Right.
This time we did about 4,000 margin. Obviously, the last election was one in which the then incumbent party was under a lot of pressure because our people were very unhappy about a number of things. And so, yes, we admitted that it affected us. But we're looking to correct our mistakes so that in the future we can put up a more resolute fight as we work to recapture the opportunity to serve.
And how is the constituency doing, though?
It's okay. We've been a very deprived constituency for many decades since independence. And since I became Member of Parliament, there were a number of things that I sought to do, a good number of which I've been able to achieve.
Okay. Well, so we'll be getting into the conversation, and we invite you, as always, to be a big part of the show. Keep your comments coming in and your questions for Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. And mind you, he has a new role now. He is the ranking on the Committee on Economy and Development in this 9th Parliament. So we'll be talking quite a bit about how the economy is currently, because you also know that there have been assertions that the economy as we see it now, or has come to the attention of the new administration, is far worse than what we're made to believe. And so we'll start from the State of the Nation address given by President John Dramani Mahama a while ago.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to what he presented to us on two key areas, works and housing and the economy?
Let me take the economy generally.
Right.
And maybe I add a third area, the generality of the State of the Nation address. I think there's been a habit where successive governments just enjoy lamenting about what previous governments have failed to do, instead of focusing on their limited period and what they need to do in that period.
Okay.
If you go back to 1966, when the first coup d'etat took place against Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the coup makers tried to justify it by explaining what they thought Nkrumah had done wrong, corruption, failure to do this debt, all sorts of stuff. And since then, successive heads of state, SMC1, SMC2, FRC, they've all just been in this business of just trying to lament and berate the previous heads of state, instead of focusing on what they need to do within the period where they have power. I will not be shy to admit that we made that same mistake in 2017. We spent a lot of time blaming John Mahama for a lot of the things. The people eventually told us that it doesn't matter. That's why we voted against him. We've given you the power. Deliver, fix it. And what we observed that President Mahama was doing the same thing that other heads of state had done.
What you label as lamentation?
Well, we don't label it as lamentation. In fact, he himself used the word lamentation, that he didn't want to lament, but he wanted to highlight a few things. 2/3 of the address was about lamentation of, he found that here, this wasn't working. All of that was factored into the election of 2024. And that's the reason for which we were voted out of power. The Ghanaian people thought that what we had done didn't meet their expectations, and so they voted us out. A day will come for us to compare our record to the exiting Mahama record. That day is not today. Today, what is opportune for us to do is to focus on the reasons for which people voted the Mahama administration into power and what they want them to address. And so we have said as a minority that we want to encourage the government, don't repeat our mistakes. Focus on bringing your governance programs now and let us assist you to deliver. Thankfully, the budget, which is the first and I dare say the most important document, is coming tomorrow. And we will get to see what the Mahama administration intends to deliver in its first year. In the economic policy, they will outline it. And then they will back it with some numbers in the budget, which will now help us to see the seriousness with which they hope to deliver. So the State of the Nation address for me was a repetition of what other heads of state have done, which has not been very good, and which we have to depart from. Thankfully, the propaganda is coming to an end, and now it's time for us to work. So let's get to work.
So if you know that the budget statement represents what the government intends to do, what are you expecting in the State of the Nation address?
We're expecting the President to be outlining how he's going to focus on some major areas to deliver. And in my presentation on the State of the Nation, for example, I outlined quite a number of things that the President has spoken about in his campaign, which we were expecting that while he was presenting the State of the Nation address, he will focus on. The State of the Nation address gives you an opportunity to tee off the substantive policy issues you want to deal with. And then your finance minister will come and fill it with the budget, how much he's going to allocate to these things to achieve. If you spend all the time in the sauna lamenting about what you inherited, you lose the opportunity to reset course and to reset focus. And it comes at consequences. If you look at what's happened in America, even this evening, as President Trump focused on tariffs here, tariffs there, and all that rhetoric, the American stock market is beginning to tumble. And now he's having to frame a new narrative around it that is just a transition period. It has consequences if you spend all your time trying to paint a certain picture of the economy. The markets will react. And when the NDC started the lamentation, the market started reacting. Thankfully, they have pulled back from it. Let's admit. You notice that after the State of the Nation address, the President said that the Finance Minister was going to give us, a more bleak picture at the National Economic Dialogue. I noticed, and I give credit to the Finance Minister, he didn't do that. He talked about the hard data, how growth had happened but hadn't translated into reducing poverty. And he stayed away from political propaganda. Tomorrow, he has another opportunity. We know, for example, that a lot of the NDC political hawks are trying to impress on him to go heavy on, trying to paint a dark and bleak picture to justify why they should not be able to fulfill some of the promises. And our advice will be that he should desist from that. He should stay true to the economic record of this country. Today, for example, the Statistical Service has been publishing some latest updates on that. Stay true to it. Right. Stay true to the cause. Focus on your programs. Don't be in a rush to admit phantom or hoax debts so that you admit them into the books to make the books look bad. And then you can say it was worse than you thought, so you can't fulfill your promises. No, the last time they did that, if you recall, in 2009, when they admitted phantom debts and created cost centers for it, the cost center of judgment debt, it became an avenue for people to put things there and collect money. That's what the Supreme Court described as create, loot, and share. We advise him, stay true to the economic record. Don't admit phantom debts and phantom figures that people bring to try and bloat the books. And in the end, you can have a decent set of figures to build on. The Ghanaian economy is recovering. Admit it and build on it. That's what we'll say to him.
It's curious. You say that the political hawks in the NDC are seeking to advise the president to venture into these, paint a bleak picture just to justify why he will not be able to pull through with some of the policies. Isaac Adongo sat in the chair you're sitting in last week right here, and he told me that that is a false narrative and that President Mahama will stick to every single promises made to the Ghanaian people. Do you have information to the contrary?
Yes, we do. For example, we agreed before the 2024 election that in our bid to help the Ghanaian economy recover, we had introduced a number of taxes which had overburdened the Ghanaian. And that in 2025 going, if we have the opportunity to redesign the fiscal framework of this country, we will not include those taxes. COVID, e-levy, betting tax. And we said that we'll take those off. We know it will create a hole of about 7 billion cedis a year, roughly about 20 billion cedis for the 4-year period. but we have an alternative way to do it. Our friends in the NDC lambasted us heavily. These taxes are bad, they are draconian, take them off. They did not offer an alternative on how they were going to deal with it. Today, they come to power and they are confronted with the reality that you have to take those taxes off, because both of us agreed. Because they realize that they do not want to fulfill it. There are some who are telling them, come and tell a very bad story. Then you have one of two options. Either you have a justification not to take it off, or you take it off and you reintroduce new taxes at the back. You slap VAT on some items that VAT was not on, so that you can make up for that shortfall. We've agreed that there's too much taxation in the system, and even if we had the opportunity, we'd take those ones off. Now, what is happening and what I hear, I've been information minister before, I know this job. If you listen to the language that my brother Felix Kwachifosu is using, what Isaac Adongo is using, I expect that they'll take off those three taxes. I'll be shocked if they don't.
Right.
But what we can see they are going to do is that they are going to introduce new taxes at the back door. Try and introduce VAT on some other things, maybe some type of financial services, some taxes on mining, some taxes on maybe telecoms, I'm not too sure. But I can sense the way they are going, that they want to say, we have fulfilled our promises by removing those three taxes. But in the back, you realize that they would have probably even introduced some more taxes there. That's what we're advising them not to do. Because when you do that, you begin to lose credibility in the eyes of the Ghanaian people. They've seen that you've robbed Peter and you're going to pay Paul. Keep with it and bring an alternative. When you scrap it, bring an alternative that works for the people. We had one, put one on the table.
And for now, you've not seen the demonstration towards that?
No.
The alternative to scrapping the e-levy, among others, even though GHOne Mahama and the NDC have stated that, well, they have a variety of things to introduce to also cushion the Ghanaian people.
Yeah, but that variety of things is not new taxes or extending some of the taxes to include new items. No, that's not it. We agreed that there's an overtaxation in the system. We made mistakes in government, my brother. We made mistakes. And we have said on the floor of Parliament over and over again that we are not shy to either admit those mistakes or to put the lessons learned from those mistakes at the disposal of this government. Listen, if this our democracy doesn't work, very soon you may have people saying that they don't want democracy anymore. So it is in our collective interest that this democracy must work. There must be what the president mentioned, democratic dividend. So where we made mistakes, we will draw their attention to it. If you take off taxes and you go and bring new taxes at the back end, the people out there, excuse my language, they are not kids. They will look through it and tell you that, listen, you are robbing Peter to pay Paul. We can see through what you are doing. You promised us that this economy is overtaxed, and so you are going to take away those taxes. Take them off simpliciter. Don't take them off and then now pile up more taxes at the back or expand some taxes to cover areas that were not affected by those taxes. That's the point we are making to them. Our alternative was that when you take away these taxes, about 7 billion a year, if you look at our manifesto, we're going to cut expenditure by about 3% of GDP. That's about 30 billion TD. So you lose 7, but you cut about 30. You, in between, make about some 23 savings in there. We think that that's a more pragmatic approach to keep fidelity with your promise and stimulate the growth of the economy, rather than you take it off here, take away 3, and pile up 6 on the back. Don't do that.
Well, I don't know the information you have to that effect, but I remember having conversations with the NDC on how they intend to roll out their policies that they've talked about, even without these taxes that we are talking about tonight. And they've talked about cutting back. And that's why GHOne Mahama says, I'm going to have only 60 ministers. We are not going to do this. Even Independence Day celebration, we are going to keep it very modest. And I was told, including the fact that the savings made from here would even be channeled into the free tertiary education policy that they championed during the campaign period.
No problem. That's rhetoric. When the budget comes, we'll get an opportunity to see the numbers. If Akufo-Addo had 80 ministers and was spending 100 million on government machinery, and you have 60 ministers.
60 ministers.
Let me take that again. If Akufo-Addo had 80 ministers and was spending 100 million, and you have 60 ministers and you are spending 120 million, can you come and tell the people of Ghana that, oh, look, I've reduced the size of government, and hope that they won't look at the numbers? They will look at the numbers, and then they will say, I can see that on the surface you've reduced the number of ministers. But when I look at the cost to the exchequer, I see that rather the cost has gone up. So we are saying reduce expenditure. We said we're going to reduce expenditure by 3% of GDP, 30 billion. You will see a drop in the expenditure by 30 billion. When your budget comes, I think what you should be looking at, you have financial journalists, etc. here. What you should be looking at is going into the numbers and asking yourself whether the numbers have reduced. If the numbers have not reduced, then you know the government has deceived you.
Right.
That they may have on the surface reduced the number of ministers, but in terms of what they are spending on government machinery, the cost has gone up. You should look at the numbers.
We will definitely look at the numbers when the budget is read tomorrow. I mean, it's just a few hours away. And we'll get to know the detail of what really would be done. But then John Dramani Mahama says that the economy your government bequeathed to him is a crime scene. He looks at the economy and he weeps for Ghana. What's your response to that?
So, we must distinguish between narratives and facts. You can have somebody who wakes up and says that I've not eaten the whole day. That's a narrative. But when you check, you know that he has had breakfast, he has had lunch, he has had supper, he has even had snacks in between. So the facts will not support the narrative he's put out. So when Mr. President says that this is a criminally mismanaged economy, what are the facts? This is an economy that the Ghana Statistical Service today says that in 2024, as part of the recovery, the economy grew by 5.7%. The size of the economy was about 1.2 trillion cedis. Who were even targeting 1 trillion? Says it's about 1.2 trillion cedis. When President Mahama was leaving power the last time, the economy that had not been criminally mismanaged, it was at 3.4%. There was no global crisis. We came into office and grew the economy at 7% on the average for 3 years before COVID hit. Shook us, then we started the recovery. Today, Ghana Statistical Service says that the outturn for 2024 is 5.7%. How do you look at this fact and say that that's a criminally mismanaged economy? This is an economy that has debt to GDP ratio based on today's GDP that was announced of 1.2 trillion at 61.8%. What was the debt to GDP ratio that President Mahama left us? If I recall correctly, it's about 65%. How do you look at this economy and say that it is a criminally mismanaged economy? This is an economy that was able to generate revenues to start paying things that could not have been imagined. Take Agenda 101. We haven't finished. 111 district hospitals being constructed, and we've managed to raise $400 million to pay for work so far. We have about 1.3 more to pay to completion. This is a criminally mismanaged economy. Yet the new president, who says that he is going to manage the economy in a non-criminal manner, says that he can't find money to pay for it, and therefore he wants to franchise it. That's what he told us at the State of the Nation address. So you have to distinguish between the narrative, I've not eaten the whole day, and the fact, he has had 3 square meals a day. I say if you pay more attention to the fact and put the narrative aside, you yourself can make a determination what to make of the Ghanaian economy. The Ghanaian economy is one that, this is an economy that is now around 1.2 trillion. This is an economy that is, we've just been told, grown about 5.7%. This is an economy that we've brought inflation down from 54% post-COVID to about 23%. This is an economy that we inherited about 8 tons of gold reserves and left about 30 tons of gold reserves. This is an economy that we inherited $6.5 billion gross international reserves and left about $8 billion gross international reserves. I say to you in all humility, nobody can look at these facts in the face and say that this is a criminally mismanaged economy. The economy had problems in 2020 as part of the global economic challenges. But we have been recovering since then. And we always kept saying that we had turned the corner. When we said that they insulted us, ridiculed us all over. Today, the Ghana Statistical Service is telling you that the economy grew at 5.7%. What we now should be doing, instead of spending so much time trying to categorize the former economy as, or the former management regime as criminal mismanagement, is focus on what is the management that we're going to get between 2025 and 2028, and what is the rate of growth we are going to have. What are the jobs? Unemployment was sitting around 14%, no problem. So what is going to be the unemployment rate by the time we are done? Then you can compare those two. You are today looking at our debt to a GDP ratio of 61.8 today. Already, this administration, the first 2.5 months or so, is borrowed over 70 billion cedis. Joshua, I'm not sure you've heard that kind of scenario before. So what is the debt to GDP ratio they are going to leave us at the end of the period? So I don't think we should be in haste, just seeking to lambast, categorize the previous administration. Let's focus on the work at hand. 4 years is a very short time.
Right.
And deliver. And then we can compare your record to the outgone administration.
Now, in terms of borrowing, like I said, Isaac Adongo was sitting in your seat. He mentioned the fact that, well, what they are borrowing now is to pay for what you had to pay, but did not before you left the administration, for which reason they had no option than to do the borrowing they're doing now.
But when we told them this in 2017, they said we shouldn't say it. You remember Franklin Templeton? When we did that almost $2.7 billion dollar equivalent transaction to raise debt, to service debt obligations that they had left for us and to have liquidity to start government. They even took Kenuforiata to Shraj. In fact, initially they came to tell the people of Ghana that Kenuforiata had sold some debt instruments to an old friend of his called Franklin Templeton. It wasn't a human being even, it's an institution. But you see, history has a very interesting way of coming around full circle. Today they are now telling us that the almost 70 billion plus that they have borrowed, they borrowed it to pay old debts. When we borrowed, what were we doing with it? And now they are telling us that it's not even the 67 billion. That's why we mentioned 67. It's not even that one. But the net was only 7 billion. That means that they have only added 7 billion to the debt stock. Joshua, you remember that a few months ago, when we were in power, the NDC kept telling us that you've borrowed X amount, show us what you've done with the money.
Yes.
We could point to projects that they say, no, they haven't seen it. Show us what you've done with the money. So the 7 billion that they say they've added to our debt stock between January 7th and now, what have they done with it? Can you see any project worth 7 billion? Sometimes the propaganda, we got to shift away from it and focus on the governance programs. And that's why I keep insisting you've won the election. Put the propaganda aside. Bring your governance programs and let's get to work. We don't have time. 4 years is very short time. Let's get to work.
In terms of the governance projects, John Mahama at the State of the Nation address talked about Saglemi. Talked about the fact that, well, as it stands now, he's going to complete it. He's not going to abandon it. And then after that, we take it off from there. What was the state of Saglemi housing project
before we were leaving office? We had identified a private contractor and signed off on the heads of terms. And the contractor had even moved to site. You remember the story about fire at Saglemi?
Saglemi, yes.
It was because the contractor was on site and was clearing the site. And as part of the clearing of the debris, they were burning part of debris, and it caught one of the old warehouses. It didn't affect the project. So that story about Saglemi is evidence that the contractor was on site and was resuming work. Yeah. It is expected that we are not empowered, they are empowered. They'll go ahead and continue and finish off with it. Nothing strange about that. But if anybody says that we abandoned it, we didn't abandon it. It took a while for us to get contractor on site. I would admit that. But at the time we were leaving office, there was a contractor on site. What they have to do is to focus and finish it. And
I've heard you in interviews talk about the fact that, well, you were never selling Saglemi off to a private investor.
No.
It was just PPP, public partnership.
We invited a private investor to bring their resources and their technical expertise to continue from where government left off. And then on the completion of the project, as was intended, will be sold to buyers.
Yes.
And then when the funding comes in, the private investor takes out his money, government takes out his money.
Do you get an indication that government would continue this arrangement?
I expect government to continue with it.
You expect government to do so?
Of course. I mean, government is a continuum. So what was started by the previous administration, I expect it to continue. Free SHS was started by the previous administration. Agenda 101 was started by the previous administration. I expect it to continue. If government has another reason for which it wants to change its mind, it will have to come before the people and explain that reason. And we can all try and make sense of what they are saying.
But you still are of the view that this is the way to get Saglemi operational.
If you need $100 million extra to finish this project, within these fiscal constraints as we have as a country, and the Treasury cannot cough out another $100 million, after $200 million has been paid and people collected the money and didn't deliver the project, I think that the best way to go is to bring on board private financing to finish it. Let the private person take his money, let government take its money, than to now say you are going to burden the taxpayer with extra $100 million to try and finish the project. I think that's the best way to go.
Right. So in terms of even that, now when we look at the whole concept is to make sure that we have affordable housing. But the even concern is that these affordable housing units are not even affordable to people in the first place. Saglemi would be completed, would be sold off. Do we anticipate that really it would be affordable for people to get the buy-in?
The model that we were using was aimed at ensuring that at the end of the day it would be affordable to the average person to buy.
Right.
I don't want to go too much into the details. It's all in the handing over notes for the new minister. I think we should give them some space to, try to wrap their minds around it. But the model that we had was quite clear. Yeah. By the time we are done, it will be affordable for people to purchase.
Well, John Mahama also proposed a new scheme at the SONA. He talked about the fact that we'll have a low-cost social housing project through the district housing scheme, which would eliminate financial barriers. You're already smiling at that. That should be good news, isn't it?
Well, district housing was started on my watch as Minister for Housing. We conceptualized the idea, we wrote the concept note, we designed the 40 units per settlement, we costed it, we gave out the contracts for district housing. I'm happy that Mr. Mahama's administration wants to continue. That's why I'm smiling. Government is a continuum. If it's a good thing, I'm happy they are continuing.
Well, this is a conversation pre-budget with the Member of Parliament for Ofoase Ayirebi, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. And like I said earlier, we're also inviting you to join our conversation on social media. We are live on Facebook, live on X, also live on YouTube. Do drop your comments and let's have a conversation about what to expect. We'll be getting the next phase of the conversation. We'll be talking about the budget statement, what the expectations are. He has said already that he expects that government would stick to its promise to clear the betting tax, e-levy, COVID, and then not go around to introduce some new taxes. But let's talk about John Dramani Mahama. He's been in office since January 7 till date. Some say it's early days yet. But Kodjo, what would be your assessment of John Mahama so far?
Usually governments start well. You remember when we came to office, we did so well that we even had a meeting between former President Kufuor, former President Rawlings, former President Mahama at the office of the President. And they started a colloquium where they could occasionally get together and agree on some things.
Yes.
We appointed our government at that time in record time, and our ministers were out there doing their best to try and make ends meet. Until somewhere around 2020 when we were hit by a global crisis that people don't want us to talk about. We believe that over time, history will be kind to us on how we managed things. So the beginning is usually not very difficult. And if you look at how President Mahama has started, it's in consonance with how most governments begin. I remember President Kufuor going to see Nyasingbe Yadema at the time and going to Ivory Coast on the good neighborly tours. I remember President Akufo-Addo. Now I see President Mahama doing the same thing. These things are normal and are usual. Governments, when they are elected, come with a lot of goodwill. In the beginning, President Akufo-Addo had close to like 1 million votes, in excess of his competitor, and there was so much goodwill. But as time went on and the economic conditions were biting, and we say that those economic conditions were not our making, we lost a lot of the goodwill. I am hoping that the government will be able to channel its goodwill into doing the difficult things early enough, and not just riding on it and basking in its euphoria that, people are happy with us. The Ghanaian political landscape is very sophisticated. People are happy with you for a purpose. When those purposes are not being sustained, you will begin to lose that goodwill. So, for example, today, if you listen to the vox pops that are going on, people say that in the budget they are expecting that something will be done about escalating fuel prices. People are saying that they are expecting that something will be done about escalating transport fares. People are saying that they are expecting that something will be done about the energy situation, both the supply, the doomsaw, and then the pricing. People are saying that they're expecting that the tax regime will be dealt with, that employment will be dealt with, that investment in education, investment in infrastructure. If you don't deliver on these things, no matter the causes, the Ghanaian people will tell you that we are not impressed with you. And I think that that is what our colleagues in the new administration have to quickly grasp and pay attention to, and focus on how to concretize their programs to deliver on these things. Bring those programs, let's assist you, the necessary laws, the necessary financing, and deliver. Don't be too excited. The election was like 3 months ago. They have voted already. They have passed their judgment already. If you spend all your time jubilating over that one, and you don't focus on the work that is ahead of you, time will catch up with you very quickly.
Are you not seeing that? The focus on the work ahead, because 24-hour economy is one of the trump cards that the NDC wrote.
When was the president's advisor on 24-hour economy appointed? Between the time of the appointment and now, this budget is going to be based on the 24-hour economy policy.
Right.
Have you seen the policy?
Not yet.
We haven't seen it in Parliament. Tomorrow, the finance minister is going to come and say, Mr. Speaker, we have a 24-hour economy policy that will create jobs and incomes and growth for people. And we've allocated 100 million to it in the budget. Yeah. Is that it? Even the NDC members of Parliament have not had an opportunity to scrutinize the 24-hour economic policy, the foundation policy for expanding the economy according to them. They have another policy in their manifesto called the Economic Transformation Agenda. Have you seen it? You haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. Even the NDC members in Parliament, they haven't seen it. And we are saying, bring it. Spend less time on the joy and the propaganda and focus on the policy document and bring it. So that all of us can look at it and say, Charlie, look here, correct this. We made this mistake here. Don't repeat it. Do this. So that when you are finally doing the budget, it's well conceptualized. You won't bring it. You want to wait last day and put all together and bring it. We've complained time and time again that when you do that, Parliament becomes a rubber stamp. So you bring it and within 3 weeks, you have to approve it for you and it's gone. Your own members will not have even familiarized themselves with it. And therefore, implementation will become a problem for you. So it's not about whether I'm seeing it. Let's ask ourselves, your viewers, how many of them have seen the 24 economic policy? How many of them have seen the economic transformation agenda? How many of them have seen the economic recovery program? We went for a national economic dialogue.
Yes.
Have you seen the outcome of the dialogue? Have you seen the solutions they came up with? You covered it.
Yes. But we saw all the sector heads also propose.
What are the solutions?
They gave their
what are the solutions that they came up with?
But the finance minister says all these will find its way in the budget. So that we'll be seeing tomorrow.
So we are waiting tomorrow to see the solutions. No problem. We are here. You are not leaving. I'm not leaving. We'll be here for the next 36 hours. And we will see the solutions that they've admitted into the economic policy that they'll present to us tomorrow. We keep making the point that if you don't pay attention to developing your governance programs, and you spend all the time on committees, conferences, headlines, rhetoric, propaganda, you win the headlines. You won't win those things. They don't create jobs for people.
But they are getting the buy-in of the people. For which reason we are seeing the finance minister, his deputy, Makola, engaging traders, getting their buy-in into.
Do you know Kojo Oppong?
Yes, I do.
Minister for Finance. He used to go to the market to meet market women. Going to the market to meet market women is good. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that the budget you will bring will answer the question of the market women. Or even if it answers the question, the implementation will satisfy them. So it may be nice for the optics today, nice photo, etc. But the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. That's why we keep saying, stop the propaganda and the settings and come and let's.
You think what we are saying is settings?
A lot of it, my brother. A lot. The president came to tell us that he had invited us to the National Economic Dialogue, and that we should all show patriotism and come. It was settings. No invitation came to us. Check from the minority, check from the NPP. No invitation came to us. So there's a lot of settings. National Education Forum, I'm sure you have seen it. You cover it quite often. They go around the country, people are giving ideas, so and so and so and so. Nice, optics. What are the final ones that they have admitted that they are going to?
Is it also one of the mistakes you made that you wish they would not make?
Well, we didn't do too much settings.
In
fact, we think we didn't do enough settings. I'm telling you, we think we didn't do enough settings. We did a lot of work. One of the criticisms you hear about us was that our communication wasn't where it was supposed to be. So we think we didn't do enough settings and creating impression around our stuff. They are doing a lot of it. But I'm saying to you that one, you can do as much of it. What people want is jobs. You can call 10 conferences if it doesn't translate into jobs for people to actually get jobs and get a salary at the end of the day. They are not going to say that because you called 10 conferences, they are happy with you, so they are going to. They are going to say, I don't have a job. They will measure the unemployment rate, 14%. Is it gone up or come down? So those are the things that we should focus on. And I keep telling you that we will honestly bring all our knowledge and experience to bear. If they listen, and if they work with some of the ideas that we are drawing their attention to, it will serve them.
But you didn't show up at the National Economic Forum.
Because we were not invited. And you can't just walk into it. All the people who were there, they didn't just walk into it. They were invited. We were not invited. And that's why I say it's settings.
So it was not you boycotting the...
We were not invited. We were not invited. And that's why I tell you that it's settings. So you say, well, let's all be patriotic and come to the national to plan there, and then you have not invited the people. It's settings. If you do all of these conferences and committees and dialogues, and it doesn't translate into specific programs with budgets attached, which we can all see and agree on and measure. And that's why I asked you, the National Economic Dialogue, 2 days, what are the solutions? You can't tell me. They are now saying that it will come in the budget. Okay, we'll be here. God help us. We'll now see which of them is been included in the budget and ask ourselves whether it answers the questions that people are asking. Unemployment. Mm-hmm.
And that will be solved by the 24-hour economy because you're going to have
one job, 24
3 people.
You have said
running
24
shifts.
One job, 3 people running 3 shifts. Yes. Already the people who are working, they've sacked them. The thousands of people who
because they said you employ those people
that is the narrative. What is the fact? Check the fact. Check if it is true that they were recruited irregularly. People who've been recruited from August or sometimes April and have been paid since then. You say that they were recruited after December 7th. That's ludicrous. The people have been recruited from April and August and they've been paid. They have work reports and other things, and you say that they were recruited after the election. That's a narrative. It's not supported by the fact. So I encourage that we pay less attention to the propaganda and the narratives and more attention to the facts. But here's my argument. If you say 24-hour economy is the answer to unemployment, where is the 24-hour economic policy document? So that you can give to even some of your academics, Issa and all of the people that, Professor, look at this document and tell me whether it satisfies what will work for us. You don't have a copy. You go online, you can't find a copy. They haven't presented a copy to Parliament. So we govern by 24-hour economy will solve unemployment. We say it and then that's it? No. We should not make those mistakes. We should not repeat some of those mistakes. So spend time putting it in policy documents, doing the analysis, bring it to Parliament, let's appropriate the money, let's pass the laws to support you, let's also help you to check whether your own people, in governance, the president sometimes can have the best intentions. Sometimes the chief executive and the deputy chief executive who are supposed to make the thing work, they are sleeping on the job. If you don't concretize it into a document, a program document, and bring it so that we can all measure and follow, you will be thinking that you have announced a program, and the program is not working on the ground. So please, let's get the governance programs together. Let's lay it before Parliament so that, like, by now that the budget is coming, we understand the
So your
programs.
argument is that all of these things should have been provided by now.
They should
so
have
that
been.
we would have a proper precision
Because the
even
budget,
before the budget
is based on those documents. If you read Article 36(5) of the Constitution, it says that when you win power, you have to convert your manifesto into what we call a coordinated program of social and economic policies. That's the document that you use to prepare the budget. Where is it? If you haven't done it and you are doing conferences and propaganda and talking, you will come with a budget that is not even connected to your manifesto.
Right.
And you will struggle to deliver. And I'm telling you that we should not get back into a system where government struggle to deliver. It won't be good for our democracy.
So now let's talk about the budget that will be presented tomorrow.
Yeah.
Key, I am sure that after conversations with people, the key thing is the taxes that we're told we're going to be.
It's one of them. Yeah.
Which would basically alleviate the challenges that Ghanaians are facing.
Yeah.
But then, is there any other option around that? Because others have also argued that, yes, these revenues, they are revenue streams. And in these times, perhaps we should not be too eager to scrap off those taxes.
No, you should cut the taxes because we have all agreed and we've campaigned on the fact that the Ghanaian economy is overtaxed. So that is not a matter for debate.
Okay.
I see all this attempt to rationalize that, hey, if you take it off, you will lose 6.4 billion. Actually, the number is 7 billion if you put all the three. We modeled it when we were doing our manifesto. It's 7 billion. Over the 4 years, it's about 20 billion plus. The debate is not about whether or not to take it away, because we have both worked the numbers and we've agreed that it should be taken off. The debate is what you do after you take it away. So I think that anybody who tries to rationalize that, hey, don't take it off, no, don't go there. We've finished that one. The question is, what do you do after you've taken it off? Our answer is that you cut expenditure. And I told you, by 3% of GDP, we modeled it. That's about 30 billion. So what is the NDC's answer? Have you heard the answer?
I mean, in conversations, they've mentioned tax expenditure cuts, which GHOne Mahama has started, by the way.
Well, he has told you that he has reduced the size of government. As to how much money it costs, you are yet to see it
in the budget.
So don't be quick to, too quick to bite. Wait for the numbers and see it. But I'm saying, if it is cuts, then you don't need new taxes at the back. We said we're going to cut. We're not going to introduce new taxes at the back. Because we're going to cut by 30 billion. Right. Good. So if it is cuts, then don't do what we call in my village, Adanko Dadadre, where you take some here and go and put it there. Or in English, they say robbing Peter to pay for.
But they said they're not going to do that.
Well, we'll be here.
In the budget.
We'll be here. I hope you'll be here.
I will definitely be
I will be here. So if it is cuts, then cut. And don't go and do that. But that's just one of the things that people are looking to see. That's about fiscal consolidation. People are looking that will reduce revenue and, as
expenditure, increase revenue.
As in the taxes, we would reduce the tax burden. We also reduce financing, and then we'll reduce expenditure to constrain the fiscals. So that's the fiscal consolidation program that people are looking for. It's just one of the things. People are also looking to see how much of the 273 economic promises of the NDC that they'll be fulfilling in their first budget. They made 273 economic promises ahead of the manifesto. In fact, ahead of the elections. And they captured it in their manifesto. So people will be looking to see how many of them that they are going to fulfill in this election. These are 273 economic promises, not general, economic promises. So people want to see that as you bring your first economic policy document, how many of them are you going to fulfill in this one? And then apart from this, there are the general everyday issues that the woman who sells at the junction here wants to hear the budget respond to. Issue of transport fares, energy bills, other utilities, infrastructure, education, health. People want to see how your economic policy and budget respond to all of these things. So those are the things that I believe all of us will be looking out for in the budget.
Well, definitely, I'm sure you also have your expectations as to what you would be waiting to hear the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasela Tuforsen, say in Parliament tomorrow. This is State of Affairs here on GHOne Television. We'll go for a quick break. When we do return, we'll also be looking at the NPP and their repositioning for 2028, among others. Stay with us. Well, thank you so much for staying on with us. And this is still State of Affairs right here on GHOne Television. My guest is the Member of Parliament for Ofoase Ayirebi. He's also a former Minister for Works and Housing and also former Information Minister. And his new role now is the ranking on the Committee on Economy and Development in the 9th Parliament. That's the new role he's been assigned to. Kodjo, and that role, that's quite huge. Economy and development.
Yeah. But that's a job we went for to be of service, so we'll do our best.
And what does that job, what would that demand of you as ranking on that committee?
If you look at Order 230 of the Standing Orders of Parliament, the Committee on Economy and Development, we are responsible for matters of growth, jobs, poverty and inequality, external developments, real sector development, so like agri industry services, tracking the kind of progress in those areas. Some of the development opportunities and challenges in the country, we are responsible for it. There's a whole list. If you look at Article 36.5 that I was just telling you about, converting the manifesto into the coordinated program of social and economic policies and using it to do your budgets.
Yes.
Using it to do your economic policies and budgets, efforts within our domain to keep a look at. Specific economic programs, 24-hour economy, economic transformation agenda, economic recovery program, all of those.
All falls within.
Yeah, we'll have to be keeping an eye on them. Issues of macro stability, and for example, the Bank of Ghana and all that the Bank of Ghana does and their role in the economy, it also fits under our committee. So I'll be working with the chairman of the committee to ensure that we're able to deliver Parliament's charges or tasks in these areas.
Now, when you mentioned the sector, services, or all of that, agri has not been doing too well. According to the statistics released by the Ghana Statistical Service, this government has said that, well, it's one of our priority areas. And so even with the Minister of Trade, agribusiness has been attached to it. What would be your expectation of that sector as to how this government decides to go?
There's been a number of times when governments have pumped money into agri with the view that we increase productivity and create jobs there. Does the increase in productivity translate into cheaper food prices on the markets and food security? The answer is no. So what's the missing link? So if all that this government does is to repeat the same exercise of making some more money available to agri and setting up agri mechanization centers and agri extension offices, so pumping in stimulus to increase output and jobs, and they haven't done anything new, that doesn't represent a reset. The gap is that when you have increased productivity and jobs, it has to be able to translate into food security and cheaper food prices. My uncle Eric Opoku at his vetting, and he was very clear that that is the measure of success. How does it translate into food security, which is defined as the availability of food over a period and at a certain price that is affordable. So that is the measure of the success of agri. So what this administration needs to do is not just to repeat what has been done over the period. First of all, they don't have to fall short of what we did. But they have promised that they are going to do better than we did. So you don't just get agri productivity up and jobs up. It's got to translate into food security. And if it doesn't translate into food security, respectfully, my submission is that you would not have succeeded in doing anything better than previous administrations did. Especially if you even fail to perform as well as they did in agri. Then you are having serious questions to answer.
Because I remember speaking, this afternoon on the bulletin, I spoke to GHOne, and one of their key expectations is that they expect that the government would be able to sustain the Planting for Food and Jobs initiative that was commenced under your administration, but they need to look at the lapses that were very, very clear in the program and not repeat those same mistakes.
First part, they are saying that continue the program and cure the gaps in the program. That program was aimed at improving output and jobs. So what they are saying is that if agri was doing, let's say, 4% based on the input that you put in, clear the inefficiencies and let it do like 4.5 or 5 or 6%. That's what God will say. But I'm saying to you that in addition to that, the measure of success is whether you here in Accra
can afford
food ends up cheaper at your table or at stable prices. It's available and is a price stable. That's food security. If that is not happening, any government that says that I've pumped X amount of money and this is the output has only solved half of the problem. And to the extent that the new government will only just repeat what the old government did, then they haven't done anything differently. It has to now go the extra mile, because before the election, when you survey town and people are complaining, they are not complaining about the input. They are complaining about the price. You remember the conversation about the ball of kinky size and the price?
Yes.
That's a question of food security.
The kinkonomics.
Good. So at the end of the day, what you need to do is to measure the results. That's a lesson we have learned. That we spent a lot of time and money and resources on the input side. And it got the productivity up and the jobs up. But what did it mean in terms of the price of food and availability of food?
It didn't translate.
If you don't get that fixed, my brother, you haven't gone very far.
Interesting. Well, so let's talk about your party, the New Patriotic Party. What happened in 2024, a lot of people have described as a tsunami that hits the party. Now, in the bouncing back agenda for the party, your name came up strong also.
For what?
I like the forward. As minority leader.
Oh.
Did you hear that?
I did, to be honest with you. I heard that. Then it wasn't just my name. There were several other names that came up. There were press conferences. But you know what? Any such time when leaders are being selected, different groups will nominate, different people and talk about it. So I think it was one of those things in that era.
Yes.
But I think the party was very clear. We need a lot of continuity to be able to. If you look at our numbers, about half of our numbers now are new members of parliament. We need a lot of continuity to be able to shepherd and crossover. And so we made some very clear decisions, and we are building on the back of those decisions.
Osache Mensah says that he had to resign to prevent the party from imploding.
I think that's his perspective, that's his narrative. It doesn't change where we are today. It doesn't change what we have to do going forward. I think that we are better off spending a lot more of our energy and our resources on figuring out what we have to do to go forward. What we have to do to go forward is to introduce a number of reforms at the party level.
Yes.
To strengthen the party in terms of policy and in terms of election attractiveness, and to translate those reforms into what we offer at the higher national level. I think that things that have happened in the past, as important as it is to diagnose them, we can't go back to the past. We have to use them to learn lessons, to do a better job for the future. And that's where I think we should channel our energies.
And do you see your party doing that?
We've
because
started.
people have talked about the fact that, recovery for the NPP would not be an easy task if you want to come back stronger in 2028.
We don't think it will be an easy task either. I don't believe in deluding ourselves. We don't think it will be easy. First, we need to diagnose the problem. If you have cancer and you think it's malaria, you're not going to get cured. So you need to do a proper diagnostic. That's what the Michael Quay Committee is doing.
Okay.
To do a proper diagnostic and then to come up with the recommendations that we need to follow through on and execute to reform the party at various levels and for various purposes, and to make it a more attractive election vehicle, A, and B, when we win power, to make it a more robust governance vehicle for the future.
Because the NDC keeps saying that you've not come to terms with the reality that hits you in 2024. You've not been able to wrap your heads around it.
We are in the process of trying to gather the information. We want to work with data. We don't want to just get personal and emotional and be pointing fingers. We want to gather the information. That's why we're doing this exercise across the whole country. Gather the information, and based on that information, take decisions. So it's okay if they want to mock us that we haven't come to terms with it. We are in the process of coming to terms with it by gathering the data and using that data to inform what we do next. I think what they should be focusing on is their governance programs. I've said it over and over again. They don't have time. Focus on putting your programs together so that even your MPs in Parliament can defend your programs. Your MPs in Parliament can get up on their feet and speak to the programs that you've put on the table and even convince us that these programs are superior. I think that's what they should focus on and allow us to go through our process of coming to terms and reorganizing and reforming our party. We'll do that.
There's a clamor for the return of Bawumia. Is that too early?
Let's gather the data. And based on the data, we'll take our steps going forward.
Very well. Now, in spite of all of that, you managed to retain your seat in the area. What worked for you?
The feedback when we did our post-election analysis essentially shows that we were able to deliver a good chunk of our manifesto promises at the local level and also keep a very good relationship with the key actors on the ground in such a manner that it kept making the party attractive to win our votes. We usually win between 4,000, 6,000 thereabouts, I think. This time we did about 4,000. We had wanted to increase our margins. The wind of change was against us, so we didn't get there. But we still managed to win with a very healthy margin. We think we have learnt our lessons, and we're starting the process of building on it to be able to do better going forward.
And in your introductory remark, you mentioned that your constituency has been staffed for quite a while.
Yes.
And so what should the constituents expect from you in this 9th Parliament?
Well, in this 9th Parliament, one of the things that we are focusing on is a lot of economic intervention programs to support youth groups, to support agric farmer groups, to support our women a lot more. We've been able to do a lot of the infrastructure. We didn't have a major tarred road before I became MP. By the grace of God and the hard work of the NPP administration, today over 10 of our road projects are under construction. A lot of them have been tarred. We didn't have even a medical doctor, one medical doctor in my constituency before I became MP for a population of 100,000 people. So we've built an ultra-modern accident and emergency center and a medical theater. We've got 3 medical doctors, and I'm very grateful to them for their presence there. We've built accommodation, provided transportation for them. We've been able to invest and build from scratch a number of new schools to replace some of the old and dilapidating school blocks. We still have a number of old school blocks that require recovery. Currently, I'm building 5. I think in the coming weeks, we'll be commissioning some of these 5, about 2 of them, and handing them over, because it's a continuous exercise. It will take a while for us to finish. So we have done a lot of infrastructure work. We think that it is now time to also pay some more attention to the economic needs of our people, and that's why we'll be pushing a lot of attention.
Interesting. So as it stands now, I mean, like I said, your new role as the ranking member, people of Ofoase Ayirebi would also be keeping an eye on you to see how you deliver, because you're going to monitor one of the most important aspects of the governance of this administration. And so, what will be your final words to the people?
Well, I think politics and governance is a demand-driven profession. Feedback is always important. Keep giving me the feedback. Myself and my team will keep working with the feedback.
Bravo, Kodjo, thank you so much
for your time. Thank you for having me.
So that's Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. He is the Member of Parliament for Ofoase Ayirebi, and having a conversation with us ahead of the budget statement and economic policy to be delivered by the Finance Minister in Parliament tomorrow. Mind you, tomorrow we are live there, and so this is where you get your best coverage, accurate coverage, up-to-the-minute coverage of the budget that will be read in Parliament. I am Joshua Mensah. Good night.